The sky was dark and heavy, filled with clouds that glowed faintly green. The ground was covered with broken metal, burned soil, and the smell of smoke. A human engineer named Mason Hale walked slowly through the wreckage. His boots crunched against the dusty stones as he carried a small light in his hand. The light flickered, showing the twisted remains of old machines and fallen ships. He had been here for 3 days, alone. His shuttle had crashed after being hit by an energy storm, and now he was trying to fix it before the next storm came. But parts were missing and power was running low. Every sound in the night made him tense. This planet was not friendly to humans. It once belonged to an alien empire that hated his kind. Mason wiped sweat from his face and looked up at the strange green sky. "Just one more wire," he muttered, kneeling by a panel. The air was thick and his breathing mask hissed softly. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. Then, through the silence, he heard it. A voice. It was small and soft, like a child whispering in the dark. "I can't find my mother." Mason froze. His light trembled in his hand. He looked around quickly, pointing the beam across the dark plain. Nothing moved. Only the sound of the wind and distant echoes. He waited. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe it was the wind playing tricks. Then the voice came again, clearer this time, closer. "Please, help me. I can't find my mother." Mason's heart beat faster. The voice sounded frightened, gentle, and trembling. Definitely a child. But there were no children here. "Only the remains of war. Hello?" He called softly. "Who's there?" No answer. Just the rustle of something moving behind the metal wrecks. He slowly lifted his blaster. "I won't hurt you," he said, walking toward the sound. The fog thickened around him, making everything blur. His light cut through it, shaking slightly with his hand. Then, suddenly, he saw her. A small figure stood near a broken engine part. The figure was glowing faintly, blue and silver light coming from her skin. She was small, thin, maybe 8 or 9 years old in human terms. Her eyes were pale white like polished glass. She wasn't human. She was one of them, the enemy, an alien child. But she looked lost. Her head turned slightly as if trying to see him, but her eyes did not move. That's when Mason realized she was blind. He lowered his weapon. "Hey, are you all right?" he asked carefully. The girl flinched at his voice and took a step back. "Please don't hurt me," she whispered. "I can't see you," Mason sighed. He put the blaster back into his holster and raised both hands. "I'm not going to hurt you, okay? My name is Mason." She tilted her head, listening to his voice. "You're human." "Yes," he said. "And you're very far from home." Her small hands trembled. "I lost my mother. I've been calling for her, but she doesn't answer. The ground shakes and there are loud machines. I got scared." Mason's heart softened. She sounded so innocent, so real. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're safe now." But before he could move closer, a sound echoed in the distance, a deep mechanical thud. Then another. Mason's blood ran cold. Those weren't thunderclaps. Those were footsteps, metal ones. He quickly turned off his light and grabbed the girl's hand. "Quiet," he whispered. "They're coming." The girl froze. "Who?" "Soldiers," he whispered. "Your people, I think. But they don't sound friendly." The footsteps grew louder. Mason pulled the girl behind his crashed shuttle and crouched low. He peeked over the edge and saw glowing red lights moving through the fog, scanning beams. A voice echoed through the air, metallic and sharp. "Search the wrecks. The hybrid child cannot be far." Mason frowned. "Hybrid child?" He looked at the girl beside him. Her glowing skin, her strange white eyes. Something was different about her. "Are they looking for you?" he whispered. She nodded slightly, fear filling her face. "Yes, they want to take me back. They say I'm not supposed to exist." Mason clenched his jaw. He didn't understand everything, but he knew one thing. If those soldiers found her, she'd be dead or worse. "Stay down," he said softly. "Don't make a sound." The red lights passed close by, scanning the wrecks. Mason could hear the hiss of the machines, the hum of their sensors. He held his breath, shielding the girl with his body. The sound of his heartbeat felt like thunder in his ears. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the soldiers moved farther away. Their lights disappeared into the mist. Mason let out a slow breath. "They're gone," he whispered. The girl's small hand clutched his arm. "Thank you," she said in a shaking voice. He looked down at her, this blind, glowing child who had no one left. He didn't know who she was or what kind of danger she brought with her. But he couldn't just walk away. He sighed and said, "All right, kid. Let's get you out of here before they come back." The girl nodded weakly, her white eyes turning toward his voice. "Will you help me find my mother?" she asked softly. Mason hesitated. He looked at the fog, the ruins, the silent world around them. Then he nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We'll find her." As they moved into the shadows together, the fog behind them thickened again, and somewhere in the distance, the red eyes of the soldiers turned back toward the crash site. The hunt had just begun. The night on the ruined planet grew colder. A thin mist floated across the ground, glowing faintly under the green clouds. Mason and the blind alien girl, Lyra, moved carefully through the wreckage. Every sound echoed like a warning. Lyra's small hand held tightly onto Mason's sleeve. Her touch was warm, trembling. She could not see, but she seemed to sense every step, every vibration around her. "Slow down," she whispered. "Something big moved behind us." Mason stopped. He listened, but heard nothing except the wind. Still, he trusted her. He had seen how sharp her hearing was. "Let's keep moving," he said quietly. "We need to get off the open ground." They reached the broken edge of an old tunnel half buried under metal plates. Mason knelt and brushed away dust. It looked like a service tunnel from the war days, dark, deep, and dangerous, but safer than staying outside. He pushed a panel aside and motioned for Lyra to crawl in first. She hesitated, touching the cold metal with her fingers. "It smells like oil and ashes," she murmured. "Better than soldiers," Mason said. Inside, the tunnel was narrow. Mason had to crouch while Lyra moved easily, guided by touch. Her small fingers ran along the walls, tracing cracks and wires. The air was still heavy with dust. After a few minutes, Mason stopped to catch his breath. He turned on a small light. "We should rest," he said softly. Lyra nodded, sitting beside him on a piece of old metal. Her glowing skin gave off just enough light to show her delicate face. "Who were those soldiers?" Mason asked finally. "They were searching for you." Lyra lowered her head. "They're from the Empire. My people. Your people," he said, frowning. "Why are they hunting their own child?" She hesitated before speaking again. "Because I'm not like them. My mother, she made me different." Mason looked confused. "Different how?" Lyra's fingers tightened around the edge of her robe. "I was born blind. My mother worked in the Empire's research labs. She didn't want me to live in darkness, so she tried to give me something else. Not sight, but a way to feel the world through sound." She tapped the metal floor gently. The echo bounced back through the tunnel, soft and rhythmic. "I can see by listening. Every sound tells me where things are." Mason's eyes widened. "Like sonar?" "I don't know that word," she said softly. "But yes, like that," he smiled faintly. "That's incredible," Lyra shook her head. "The Empire didn't think so. They said she broke the laws. They said she mixed forbidden elements in my body, human ones." Mason froze. "Human?" She nodded. "My mother used human DNA to help my senses grow stronger. She said it would make me understand emotion. Make me more alive." Her voice trembled. "But the Empire doesn't want emotion. They only want perfection." Mason sat back, trying to absorb her words. A child part human, part alien, made by a mother who loved too deeply. It was dangerous knowledge. "So they call you a hybrid?" he said slowly. "And they want to erase you?" "Yes," Lyra whispered. "They said I am proof of weakness." Mason clenched his fists. "Weakness?" He looked at her small, fragile form. "You're not weak. You're alive," she smiled faintly. "That's what my mother said too." For a moment, silence filled the tunnel. Only the sound of the wind moaning through the cracks above. Then suddenly they both heard something, a faint mechanical buzz from far away. Mason turned off his light instantly. "Stay quiet," he whispered. Lyra pressed her ear to the floor. "They're scanning for life signs," she said softly. "Machines that smell heat." Mason cursed under his breath. "They're close. We need to move." They crawled deeper through the tunnel, the walls growing tighter, the air colder. The sound of metal claws scraped somewhere behind them, slow, steady hunting. Mason looked back. A red glow flickered at the tunnel's end. Drones. He grabbed Lyra's hand. "Go, move faster!" Lyra didn't argue. She led him through twists and turns, following the echoes of air. Mason was amazed. She seemed to know the way, even in total darkness. Suddenly, the tunnel split into two paths. Mason stopped. "Left or right?" Lyra paused, listening. She tilted her head. Right. The air is moving that way. It must lead outside. They ran down the right path. The buzzing grew louder behind them. Mason pulled a flare from his belt, lit it, and tossed it into the left tunnel. The red light flared bright. Seconds later, explosions echoed as the drones followed the wrong trail. The heat from the flare drew them away. They stopped at the tunnel's end, gasping for breath. A faint blue glow shone from a crack above. Mason pushed a panel open, and fresh air rushed in. They climbed out into the open, a rocky valley filled with mist. Lyra lifted her head toward the wind. "We made it," she whispered. Mason looked back at the tunnel. The red lights inside slowly faded away. He turned to her and said quietly, "You're a brave kid, you know that?" She smiled shyly. "I'm scared, but you make the fear smaller." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, well, don't count on me being brave all the time." Lyra tilted her head. "Why are you helping me, human?" Mason looked out at the distant hills, glowing faintly under the alien moon. "Because someone has to," he said. "And maybe because no one helped my daughter when she was lost." Lyra's glowing eyes turned toward him. "You had a daughter?" He didn't answer. He only looked at the horizon, where new lights were beginning to rise. The Empire's patrol ships, searching again. He took a deep breath and said, "We keep moving. If your mother's still out there, we'll find her." The wind carried his words away, and the two figures disappeared into the fog. One human, one blind child, both hunted, but not broken. The chase had only just begun. The night faded slowly into a cold gray dawn. Thin light slipped through the clouds, turning the broken land into shades of silver. Mason and Lyra had been walking for hours through dry fields filled with the skeletons of machines. The air smelled of rust and ash. Every step felt heavy, like the planet itself wanted to keep its secrets buried. Lyra walked beside Mason, her hand brushing the edge of his jacket. She did not need eyes to move. Every sound, every vibration, told her where the ground rose or dipped. Sometimes she tilted her head and smiled softly, as if the wind was whispering to her. Mason watched her, still trying to understand what she really was. "You said your mother made you different," he said. "Different how?" Lyra hesitated. Her voice came quiet. "Do you really want to know?" "Yes," Mason said. "I can't protect you if I don't know what we're dealing with." Lyra stopped walking. Her glowing skin dimmed a little as if fear touched her. "My mother worked in a secret lab deep inside the Empire. She was a scientist, but not like the others. She believed in feeling, in kindness." "Kindness?" Mason asked, frowning. "Yes," Lyra said. "She said life without kindness is just metal pretending to live." Mason's throat tightened. He looked at the broken war machines around them, cold, lifeless shells. The truth of her words hit deep. Lyra continued, "The Empire uses machines and living beings together. They call them perfect forms. No weakness, no emotion. But my mother didn't agree. She thought emotion made life strong, not weak." "She sounds brave," Mason said. "She was," Lyra said softly. "When I was born blind, she tried to fix my sight using forbidden science. She used human genes. Your kinds. But something else happened. My body began to change." "Change how?" Mason asked. She turned her pale eyes toward him, though she couldn't see his face. "My mind started to hear things. Machines, data streams, signals in the air. I can hear their thoughts." Mason's eyes widened. "You can hear machines think?" Lyra nodded. "They speak in patterns and pulses. I can feel when they are near, even when they hide." She touched her temple. "That is how I knew the soldiers were coming last night." Mason felt a chill. "That's not just science, that's power." "The Empire thought so too," she said sadly. "They called me dangerous. My mother called me her miracle. She said I could be the bridge between two worlds, human and alien, machine and life. Mason was silent for a while. He thought about his own world, about the wars between humans and other races. Maybe Lyra's mother had been right. Maybe emotion was the only thing that could end the fighting. "What happened to your mother?" he asked quietly. Lyra's glowing hands trembled. "They came for her, soldiers. They said she broke the law of purity. They took her to the capital for trial." "Trial," Mason said bitterly. "That usually means execution." "Yes," Lyra whispered. "But I know she's still alive. I can feel her heartbeat sometimes. It echoes in the air like music." Mason looked at her. There was no doubt in her face. Only faith. "Then we'll find her," he said. "I promised you that." A faint smile touched her lips. "Thank you, Mason." They continued walking until they reached a narrow canyon. Strange vines glowed along the rocks, and a faint humming sound filled the air. Mason stopped, scanning the walls. "What is that sound?" "It's a relay tower," Lyra said. "A forgotten one. It connects to the Empire's data lines." Mason's curiosity lit up. "If it's still working, maybe we can use it to locate your mother." Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, but it's dangerous. The Empire can trace signals." "I'll take that chance," Mason said, climbing toward the tower. "Stay here." Lyra reached out and grabbed his arm. "Be careful." "I always am," he said, forcing a grin. Inside the tower, Mason found a half-broken console. Wires sparked faintly. He powered it using his own device and began scanning frequencies. The screen flickered, showing strange alien symbols. Suddenly, a small hologram blinked to life, an image of a woman with the same glowing skin as Lyra, older and wiser, her eyes kind. "Lyra," Mason whispered. "Is this her?" Lyra climbed up beside him, her face turning toward the sound. She smiled through tears. "Yes, that's my mother." The hologram spoke in a weak, broken voice. "If anyone finds this message, I am prisoner in the sanctum. They plan to erase my research and destroy my child. Please save her." Then the image vanished. Lyra covered her mouth, trembling. "She's alive," she whispered. "I knew it." Mason stared at the console. "The sanctum," he repeated. "Where is that?" "In the capital," Lyra said. "The heart of the Empire." "That's suicide," Mason muttered. "The capital is a fortress." "I have to go," Lyra said. "She's my mother." Mason looked at her. This blind child who could hear machines, who carried both human and alien blood, who was hunted by her own kind, and he saw something fierce in her, a will stronger than fear. He nodded slowly. "Then we'll go together." Lyra smiled through her tears. "You're not afraid?" "Oh, I'm terrified," Mason said with a half-smile. "But someone once told me that fear makes you human." The wind blew softly around them, carrying dust and broken whispers. Far in the distance, the Empire's city lights flickered like cold stars, and as they started walking toward them, the old tower came alive behind them, its sensors waking up, sending a silent signal across the planet. The Empire now knew the hybrid child still lived, and the hunt would begin again. The gray sky hung low as Mason and Lyra crossed the endless desert of glass. The ground glittered like ice, but burned under their boots. Broken towers stood like silent bones, and far beyond the horizon, a faint glow marked the direction of the Empire's capital, the place where Lyra's mother was kept. They had been walking since dawn, stopping only to rest in the shade of fallen machines. Mason's shoulders ached, his lungs burned, but he didn't complain. Lyra walked beside him, calm, quiet, her head tilted slightly, always listening. At last, Mason spoke. "The capital is hundreds of miles away. We can't just walk there. We need transport." Lyra nodded slowly. "There's an old outpost nearby. I can feel the signal of its power cells." Mason raised an eyebrow. "You can feel power?" She smiled faintly. "Machines talk to me, remember?" They reached the outpost before nightfall, a collapsed structure half buried in sand. Its walls were cracked, but a faint hum came from below. Mason found a narrow entrance and pulled Lyra inside. The air was thick with dust. Old screens glowed weakly in the dark. Mason knelt beside a control panel and connected his device. If we're lucky, this place still has a working speeder. Lyra crouched next to him, touching the panel with her small fingers. "Wait," she whispered. "Something's moving beneath." Mason froze. "What kind of something?" Before she could answer, a metallic growl echoed from the shadows. A shape crawled out, a patrol drone, its red eye shining bright. "Back!" Mason shouted. The drone fired a pulse of light that scorched the wall beside them. Mason rolled aside, pulling Lyra behind a beam. "Stay low," he yelled. But Lyra didn't hide. Instead, she pressed her hands to the floor, her body trembling. The air around her began to hum. Then, boom! A wave of invisible sound burst from her. The drone shuddered violently, its red eye flickering before exploding into sparks. Silence followed. Only the faint crackle of burning wires filled the room. Mason stared at her in shock. "What the hell was that?" Lyra's voice was weak. "My mother said I could use sound as energy, but it hurts. Inside." Mason quickly knelt beside her. "Don't push yourself like that again," he said, checking her pulse. "You'll burn out." She smiled tiredly. "You sound like her." He paused. "Like your mother?" "Yes. She used to scold me the same way." Mason looked away, his jaw tight. "I just don't want to lose you too." They sat quietly for a moment. The air was still, heavy with the smell of smoke. Mason finally spoke again, softer this time. "I lost my daughter years ago, during the First War." Lyra turned her pale eyes toward him. "What was her name?" "Ellie," he said, his voice breaking a little. "She was about your age, brave, curious, always asking questions. What happened to her?" Mason took a deep breath. "An alien raid, the kind your empire led. I wasn't there to save her." Lyra's hand reached for his. "I'm sorry." He didn't pull away. "You don't need to be sorry, kid. You're not them." There was a long silence, then softly she said, "Maybe Ellie sent you to help me." Mason blinked, surprised by her words. "What makes you think that?" "Because when I met you," she said simply, "I stopped feeling alone." Something inside Mason shifted, something he thought had died long ago. He gave a small smile. "You've got a strange way of making things make sense, Lyra." She smiled back. "My mother said hearts speak better than minds." He chuckled quietly. "Smart woman." After resting a while, Mason managed to power up an old speeder hidden in the outpost's lower hangar. The machine groaned but came alive. "It's not fast," he said, "but it'll get us close to the city." They rode through the night, the wind howling around them. Lyra sat behind him, holding tightly, her head resting against his back. The city lights slowly grew brighter in the distance, cold and white like stars trapped in cages. Suddenly, the speeder's radar began to beep. Mason frowned. "We've got company." A dark shadow moved behind them, two small flyers speeding low over the dunes. "Empire scouts," Lyra said. Mason gritted his teeth. "Hang on!" He swerved sharply as plasma shots ripped past them, lighting up the sand. "We can't outrun them." Lyra pressed her palms together. "I can stop them, if I focus." "No," Mason snapped. "It nearly killed you last time." She shook her head. "If I don't, they'll kill you." Before he could stop her, she turned, facing the pursuing flyers. A strange tone filled the air, a high, clear hum that grew stronger every second. The flyers trembled mid-air, their engines screaming. Then with a burst of blue light, they spiraled down and exploded behind them. Lyra slumped forward, her body weak. Mason caught her quickly. "Lyra, hey, stay with me." Her voice was faint. "I'm fine. Just tired." He looked into her pale, glowing eyes and whispered, "You saved my life again." She smiled weakly. "You saved mine first." Mason held her close, the speeder gliding silently through the misty night. "I made a promise," he said softly. "I'll get you to your mother, no matter what it takes." The wind carried his words into the dark. where distant lights of the capital flickered like warning eyes. Ahead lay the forbidden city, full of danger, secrets, and a faint hope that love could still survive in a world built from metal and war. And for the first time in years, Mason believed that maybe, just maybe, he could keep his promise. The capital of the empire, Vareth Prime, rose like a nightmare of glass and steel. Its towers pierced the clouds, glowing with cold blue light. Huge machines floated between the buildings like metal ghosts. Every sound was hollow, mechanical, lifeless. Mason stared at it from a cliffside miles away. "So that's the heart of the empire," he murmured. "Looks more like a graveyard for souls." Beside him, Lyra tilted her head, listening. "There are thousands of machines talking at once," she whispered. "They're angry. They can feel me. Then we'll have to move fast," Mason said. He tightened the strap on his gear. "You sure your mother is in there?" Lyra nodded, her white eyes glowing faintly. "Her voice is faint, but I can still hear her heartbeat. It's coming from the Sanctum Tower, the center." Mason sighed. "Of course it's the biggest one." They climbed down the rocky slope under the cover of darkness. The city walls shimmered with energy fields, blue currents dancing across the surface. There was no gate, only scanners that vaporized anything unauthorized. Mason crouched behind a wrecked crawler and studied the defenses through his visor. "We'll need a back door," he said. "There must be a service tunnel somewhere." Lyra closed her eyes and touched the ground. "There's a pulse beneath us, a tunnel that breathes." "It's old." "Forgotten," he smiled faintly. "Good ears, kid." They followed the faint hum until they found a round metal hatch covered in dust. Mason forced it open with a crowbar. A rush of stale air escaped, carrying the scent of oil and age. "After you," he said. Lyra slid down the ladder gracefully, her echo sense guiding her. Mason followed, sealing the hatch behind them. The tunnel stretched long and dark, lit only by faint blue circuits on the walls. "It's quiet," Mason whispered. "Too quiet," Lyra shook her head. "No, the machines are listening." They walked for miles beneath the city. Occasionally, they heard the faint rumble of transports above, like thunder through the walls. Finally, they reached a large chamber filled with abandoned tech, broken androids, cracked helmets, rusted tools. Lyra paused beside one of the fallen machines and touched its head gently. "They were made to serve, then thrown away," she whispered. Mason frowned. "Even machines get discarded here." Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold, digital, and cruel. "Unauthorized presence detected." Mason raised his blaster. "We've been made." A light flared from above as small drones descended, red eyes glowing. Lyra gasped. "They're security sentinels." "Then let's not wait for introductions," Mason said, firing a pulse shot. The beam tore through one drone, but 3 more appeared. Lyra pressed her hands against the metal floor. The air began to vibrate as she released a pulse of sound. The drones wobbled mid-air, crashing one by one into the walls. Mason ducked as debris fell around them. "You really need a warning label when you do that," he shouted. Lyra laughed weakly. "Sorry." They continued deeper until they reached a sealed door marked with alien runes. Lyra placed her hand on the surface and concentrated. The door flickered, then opened with a sigh. Inside was a large hall filled with glowing cylinders. Each one contained a body, part machine, part living being. Mason's stomach turned. "What is this place?" Lyra's voice trembled. "The rebirth chambers. This is where they erase emotions and replace them with code." He stepped closer to one of the cylinders. Inside, a humanoid shape floated motionless, its eyes dark. "They're turning their own people into machines," he said softly. "Souls traded for control." Lyra touched the glass. "My mother tried to stop this. That's why they took her." Mason turned to her. "We'll find her. I promise." Suddenly, the floor beneath them shook. A booming voice filled the hall. Subject Lyra detected. Lockdown initiated. Metal walls slid down around them, sealing every exit. Red lights flashed. Mason grabbed Lyra's arm. "Run!" But there was nowhere to go. The ceiling opened and a massive machine descended. A guardian drone shaped like a scorpion, its tail glowing with plasma. It spoke in a chilling voice. "Hybrid child, you will be returned to the sanctum for dissection." "Not today," Mason growled. He fired his blaster, hitting the drone's leg. Sparks flew, but it barely flinched. The creature swung its tail, striking the floor near Mason. The blast threw him across the room. Lyra screamed his name. He coughed, trying to stand. Lyra, use your sound. She shook her head, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. I'll hurt you too. Do it, he shouted. You have to. Lyra closed her eyes and screamed, a pure high note that shook the walls. The wave hit the Scorpion drone, cracking its armor. Circuits exploded in bursts of blue fire. When the sound faded, the machine fell silent, its red eye dimming. Mason limped over to her and put a hand on her shoulder. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Lyra smiled weakly. You said to use it. He laughed softly, then looked toward the far end of the hall. A lift door blinked open, power still active. That must go to the sanctum. Lyra stood beside him, her voice trembling but steady. Then that's where my mother is. Mason loaded his blaster, eyes sharp. Then that's where we're going. The lift doors closed behind them with a hiss, and as it began to rise toward the shining heart of the Forbidden City, both knew there was no turning back. The next door they opened might lead to Lyra's mother, or to their end. The elevator climbed in silence, carrying Mason and Lyra upward through the steel heart of Vareth Prime. The walls shimmered with electric light, and the hum of machinery echoed like distant thunder. Lyra stood still beside Mason, her face pale but calm. Her white eyes flickered faintly, catching invisible signals in the air. She's here, she whispered. I can hear her voice in the network. Weak but calling. Mason glanced at her. Your mother's voice? Lyra nodded. It's not sound. It's like a heartbeat hidden in the code. She's alive, Mason. He gave a tired smile. Then let's make sure she stays that way. The elevator stopped with a soft click. The doors slid open to reveal a long hallway made of black glass. Strange blue symbols pulsed across the floor. At the end of the corridor stood a massive gate glowing with energy, the entrance to the sanctum. As they stepped forward, the lights around them came alive. A mechanical voice echoed from the walls. Unauthorized entities detected. Human and hybrid. Defense systems activated. Mason cursed under his breath. Here we go again. Panels in the walls opened and tall guardian droids stepped out, their metal feet pounding the floor. Each one carried a glowing spear crackling with energy. Lyra squeezed Mason's hand. There are too many. Mason raised his blaster. Then we make every shot count. The droids advanced. Mason fired, hitting one square in the chest. It fell, sparks flying. Another lunged toward them, swinging its spear. Mason ducked and shot again, but more poured from the walls. Lyra closed her eyes, listening to their signals. They're connected, she said suddenly. One command controls them all. Then break it, Mason shouted, rolling behind a column. Lyra spread her hands, her body glowing brighter. The air trembled as soft waves of sound rippled outward. The droids stopped moving, their eyes flickering. For a moment, silence. Then they turned on each other. Metal clashed against metal as the machines fought themselves, tearing apart in chaos. Mason stared in awe. You just made them attack their own army. Lyra's voice was faint. I changed their orders. But it hurts. She fell to her knees, clutching her head. Mason rushed to her side. Hey, don't overdo it. We're almost there. He lifted her up and carried her toward the glowing gate. It opened with a deep hum as if recognizing her presence. Beyond it lay a vast chamber filled with blue light. In the center, inside a transparent tube, floated a woman. Tall, graceful, her skin faintly glowing like Lyra's. Her hair drifted softly in the fluid. Wires ran into her temples, connecting her to a network of machines. Lyra gasped. Mother. Her voice cracked. She stumbled forward and pressed her hands against the tube. Mother, it's me. The woman's eyes opened slowly, cloudy with pain. Her lips moved, forming a single word. Lyra. Mason's throat tightened. He had seen many strange things in his life, but this was pure heartbreak. Lyra turned to him, tears shining in her eyes. She's alive, Mason. We can save her. He nodded, scanning the control panel nearby. Just tell me what to cut. Before he could act, a deep, cold voice filled the chamber. How touching. The machine child has come home. Mason spun around. From the shadows emerged the Imperial General, clad in black armor that glowed with red light. His face was hidden behind a mask, his voice sharp as a blade. You are the human who hides the abomination, the general said. You've brought her right to us. Mason aimed his blaster. I didn't come to play games. The general laughed, a sound like static. You think you can stop the Empire with flesh and hope? We have replaced weakness with perfection. Perfection without heart is just death with polish, Mason shot back. The general raised his arm. A surge of energy blasted from his palm, throwing Mason across the room. He hit the wall hard, gasping for breath. Lyra screamed and something inside her snapped. Her glow brightened until the air itself seemed to vibrate. "Stay away from him." The general's armor began to crack under invisible pressure. "Impossible," he growled. "You are just—" Her voice turned into a sonic storm. The walls shook. Screens exploded. The energy tube around her mother shattered and the fluid poured out. Mason crawled to his knees, shielding his eyes from the light. "Lyra, stop before you destroy yourself." But she couldn't stop. The entire sanctum trembled as her power surged. The general tried to move, but his armor twisted and collapsed around him. His final scream echoed like breaking metal. When it was over, the light faded. Lyra collapsed beside her mother's body, weak and trembling. "Mama," she whispered. The woman opened her eyes slowly and reached for her daughter's hand. "Lyra, you found me." Lyra smiled through tears. "I told you I would." Mason limped over, bruised but alive. "You two can catch up later. This place is coming down." He pointed to the walls, cracks of energy spreading fast. Alarms blared across the chamber. The mother looked at Mason, her eyes soft. "You saved her." "Thank you, human." Mason shook his head. "She saved me first." The three of them ran through the collapsing hall as explosions echoed behind them. Lyra leaned on Mason for support, her mother guiding them toward the last exit. As they reached the tunnel, Lyra turned to look back one last time. The sanctum was falling apart, but in that destruction she felt something new. Freedom. Mason smiled at her and said, "You did it, kid." Lyra nodded weakly. "No," she whispered. "We did." The city behind them burned, its machines silent for the first time in years. And in the middle of that ruin, 3 hearts, 1 human, 1 alien, and 1 born of both, beat together, carrying the signal of hope across the stars. The city of Vareth Prime burned. Towers once filled with cold light now fell like dying stars, sending waves of sparks into the air. The streets were silent. No more drones, no more orders, no more voices of the machines. The Empire's heart had stopped beating. Mason, Lyra, and her mother ran through the smoke, the wind hot with the breath of explosions. Every step shook the ground. Every blast behind them felt like the world ending. But for Lyra, it was a beginning. She could feel the silence. For the first time in her life, there were no endless machine signals buzzing inside her mind. The noise was gone. What remained was something softer, a rhythm, warm and human. Her mother's heartbeat. She turned her face toward the sound, smiling weakly. "Mother, I can really hear you now." Her mother squeezed her hand, her glowing eyes full of tears. "You've done what I never could, my child. You freed them." Mason stumbled beside them, coughing from the smoke. "Let's save the speeches for later. We need to reach the outer wall before the power core blows." They reached a bridge made of metal beams stretched high above the burning city. Flames roared below. The heat was unbearable. Lyra's mother stopped suddenly, looking back at the firestorm consuming the sanctum. "All those years," she whispered. "They wanted to turn life into code. But you, Lyra, you brought it all crashing down." Lyra's lips trembled. "I didn't mean to destroy everything." Her mother shook her head. "You didn't destroy it. You healed it." The Empire was sick, blind to feeling. "You showed them what love can do." Mason stared at them both, sweat running down his face. Love or not, that power core's about to go critical. As if answering him, a deafening rumble filled the air. A wave of blue light burst from the heart of the city, racing toward them. Mason grabbed both of them. "Run!" They sprinted across the bridge as it began to collapse. Metal twisted under their feet. The blast chased them like a living storm. Mason shoved Lyra forward. "Go, kid." "Don't look back." Lyra turned, refusing to leave him. "Not without you." Her mother grabbed her arm. "Listen to him, Lyra. He's buying us time." But Mason wasn't listening. He pulled out a small energy cell from his belt and slammed it into a cracked panel near the bridge gate. "This will blow the lock," he yelled. "When it opens, you two go." The light grew brighter. The sound became a roar. Mason looked back at Lyra, his face calm despite the chaos. "Remember what I told you," he said softly. "Don't ever let the world make you forget what you are." She shook her head, tears falling. "You're coming with us." He smiled sadly. "I'll be right behind you." Now go! The gate exploded open. The shockwave knocked Lyra and her mother forward, throwing them into the sand beyond the wall. Mason vanished in the light. Lyra screamed his name, but her voice was swallowed by the explosion. The world went white. When she woke, everything was quiet. The air was still cold. The sky above was gray but peaceful. The city behind her was nothing more than glowing ruins on the horizon. She sat up slowly. Her mother was beside her, weak but alive. "Mason?" she whispered. Her mother's eyes softened. "He saved us, Lyra. He saved both our worlds." Lyra bowed her head, her small hands shaking. "He promised he'd be right behind me." Her mother reached out and touched her cheek. "And he is. Maybe not in body, but in every heartbeat that loves, in every life that chooses kindness over fear." Lyra closed her eyes, and for a moment, she could hear something faint, like a pulse carried on the wind. A steady rhythm, a human heartbeat, Mason's heartbeat. She smiled through her tears. "I can still hear him." Her mother smiled too. "Then he's still with you." They watched the sky as rescue ships appeared, some human, some alien. Together they landed near the ruins, lights cutting through the smoke. A human soldier approached, lowering his weapon. "We got your signal," he said. "You the ones who took down the core?" Lyra nodded slowly. "We didn't take it down. We freed it." The man looked confused, but he didn't argue. He helped them onto a ship. As the engines roared to life, Lyra gazed out the window one last time at the broken world below. Her mother rested a hand on her shoulder. "You gave them a chance to feel again. That's something even empires can't erase," Lyra whispered softly. Mason would have liked that. The ship rose higher, leaving the ruined planet behind. The sun broke through the clouds, painting the world in gold for the first time in years. Lyra pressed her hand to the glass and whispered into the light. "You helped me find my mother, Mason. But you also helped me find myself." As the ship disappeared into the stars, a faint echo filled the silence, a single heartbeat, slow and steady, as if the universe itself remembered him. And far beyond that dying world, the story of one human and one blind alien girl would be told and retold across the galaxies, not as a tale of war, but as a story of love, hope, and what it truly means to be human.